They trusted him to deliver justice. He delivered death instead. In 2003, a Washington jury convicted a man for the brutal murder of a beloved schoolteacher. The evidence seemed convincing. The verdict felt right. But what no one realized, what no one could have imagined, was that the real killer wasn't on trial. He was sitting quietly in the jury box, taking notes, nodding along, helping send an innocent man to prison for a crime he himself committed. This is the story of Eli Forester, an ordinary man with an extraordinary darkness. A man who stalked, killed, and then manipulated the very justice system designed to stop him. For years, he blended into courtrooms, inserted himself onto juries, and watched as others paid for his crimes. It would take a deathbed confession, a hidden notebook, and the relentless pursuit of truth to finally expose what really happened. And even now, the full scope of his crimes may never be known. If you're new to Killer Truth Crime, don't forget to like, leave a comment below, and subscribe for more real-life cases that are darker, stranger, and more shocking than fiction. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode, because the truth isn't just out there. It's hiding in plain sight. October 11, 2003, Pierce County, Washington. The courtroom was silent, save for the low creak of leather chairs and the scratch of pens on paper. A man in a gray suit leaned forward in the jury box, his face unreadable as the prosecutor described how a woman was stabbed 17 times in her own home. Her name was Colleen Stanwyck, a 32-year-old kindergarten teacher, beloved by her students, known for her soft-spoken voice and compulsive need to organize. Everything from crayon boxes to her spice rack was in order. She'd been found dead in her living room 5 months earlier, surrounded by signs of struggle. The defendant? Raymond Clark, a quiet janitor who lived 4 houses down. He had a prior misdemeanor. No alibi, no known motive, but the circumstantial evidence piled up like bricks. Partial DNA under her fingernails, a vague witness statement, a red hoodie resembling his found near the scene. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. On the evening of October 11th, they returned with a unanimous guilty verdict. And sitting among them was the man who actually killed her. Colleen grew up in Everett, Washington, oldest of 3, daughter of a Lutheran pastor and a hospice nurse. She was gentle but firm, always the one to break up schoolyard fights with words instead of fists. After college, she moved to Tacoma to take a teaching job at McKinley Elementary. Her friends described her as wholesome to the core and a creature of routine. She jogged the same 3-mile loop every morning, picked up the same Starbucks order every Thursday, tall chai latte, extra hot. So when she didn't show up to school on May 3, 2003, everyone noticed. A colleague drove to her house around 1:15 p.m. and saw the blinds closed. The door was slightly ajar. What she found inside would traumatize her for life. Colleen was lying on her back, eyes open, throat slit. Blood soaked the beige carpet and dripped down into the floorboards. A broken lamp lay beside her, and the TV was still on. The autopsy later revealed 17 stab wounds, most clustered around the chest. Defensive wounds covered both forearms. There were no signs of forced entry, no sexual assault, no fingerprints. Whoever had done this, either she knew them or they had been watching her long enough to learn her habits. The only viable clue? A red hoodie found in a nearby bush, with faint traces of blood and dog hair. DNA under her fingernails yielded a partial match, but not enough to identify. Enter Raymond Clark. He had cleaned the floors at Colleen's school, lived down the street, kept to himself. Once made an offhand comment about how uptight she was. That was enough. A neighbor claimed they saw a man, who looked like Raymond, walking near Colleen's house around 10:45 the night before. A police dog traced a scent toward his home, but lost it halfway. He was brought in, questioned for 12 hours straight, and finally said, "If you think I did it, then charge me." I got nothing more to say. That sealed it. The trial was swift. Prosecutors leaned hard on opportunity and demeanor. He didn't cry when her photo was shown in court. He didn't look at the jury. He had no solid alibi. The jury convicted him. And one man, juror number 8, who scribbled notes diligently and nodded during expert testimony, never missed a day. His name? Eli Forester. Raymond Clark went to prison. Life without parole. Colleen's parents tried to move on, but something gnawed at her younger brother, Jason. He remembered something odd about the trial. A juror, maybe two, had seemed to fixate more on Raymond's appearance than the evidence. And one of them, he recalled, had stared at Colleen's autopsy photos not with disgust, but curiosity. Still, life moved forward. Until 2020, when Eli Forester was rushed to the ER after a stroke. He had 2 hours of lucidity before slipping into a coma. And in those 2 hours, he told a nurse something that would eventually detonate the case. "Tell my wife. I kept the knife in the attic. I only meant to scare her. I was on her jury." The nurse, thinking it was delusional rambling, documented the statement but said nothing until Forester died 2 weeks later. Only then did the nurse tell a friend, who knew a reporter, who contacted the Pierce County Sheriff's Office. In late 2020, detectives obtained a warrant for the Forester home. In a sealed compartment behind insulation in the attic, they found a wrapped bundle, a bloodstained hunting knife, a black notebook, and a red hoodie. DNA analysis matched Colleen Stanwyck. And a second profile, Eli Forester. The notebook was chilling. Dozens of entries described women he'd seen, watched, fantasized about. One entry, Colleen S. jogs at 5:40 a.m. Always alone. Pretty. Teacher. Thinks she's better than everyone. Turns out Eli had no prior criminal record. He worked in IT. Volunteered at a community center. But there were signs. Neighbors who found him unsettling. A coworker who said he followed her to her car once. He had slipped through every net. And when he got jury duty for State versus Raymond Clark, he volunteered eagerly. He sat in the courtroom every day, watching his own crime unfold, quietly nudging the jury toward a man who looked guilty enough. His goal wasn't just to evade justice. It was to watch himself be invisible. Raymond Clark was released after 17 years. No apology from the prosecutor. No compensation yet from the state. He told reporters, "They took my life, and the real monster got to send me there himself." Colleen's family reopened the grief. Her mother, now frail, said through tears, "I thought we'd buried her with justice. Turns out we buried her with a lie." The story made national news. Legal scholars called it a failure of the entire system. But one detail remains unconfirmed. According to the notebook, Eli claimed he had done it before. Another entry, dated 1999. She was from Portland. Red hair. Laughed too loud. Police are now reviewing cold cases from Oregon to Washington. But here's the most haunting question. What if this wasn't about justice, but theater? What if the jury box was just another seat in the audience for a killer who already knew the ending? The media frenzy after Eli Forester's posthumous confession hadn't died down. If anything, it had only grown louder. The words from his notebook, "She was from Portland, red hair, laughed," echoed like an unsolved riddle. Detectives knew they weren't just a fantasy. Because in 1999, a 27-year-old woman named Kimberly Neely had disappeared from Portland. She had red hair. She had a laugh her friends described as unmissable. And she was never found. Kimberly was a bartender at a dive called The Rook. She lived alone, took night classes in criminal justice, and was known for walking home after closing, against her friends' warnings. On October 19, 1999, she locked up the bar at 2:07 a.m. Security footage shows her waving goodbye to a coworker and heading toward Northeast 9th Street. She never made it to her apartment. There was no forced entry, no signs of a struggle nearby. Just gone. The case went cold. Until 21 years later, a name in a notebook changed everything. When Portland PD reviewed Kimberly's missing person file, something stood out immediately. A tip that came in 5 days after her disappearance. An anonymous caller said a man in a gray sedan had been circling the Rook for a week, watching the staff. The caller left no name. Detectives now believe that caller may have been Eli Forester himself. When they pulled archived cell tower logs, one number pinged off a tower near the Rook 3 nights in a row. A Seattle number registered to an E. Forester. They searched again, this time focusing on missing women in the Northwest between 1997 and 2002. There were 4 other unsolved cases that shared key details. Jessica Warren, 26, disappeared after a night shift at a grocery store in Olympia. Tara Lynn, 31, found in a wooded area near Salem, stabbed 16 times. Michelle Ong, 29, last seen jogging in Spokane. Daphne Wallace, 33, left her office late in Bellingham. Her body was never recovered. All were women. All lived alone. All were creatures of habit. All had brief but unconfirmed sightings of a man described as average-looking, white, early 30s, forgettable. Just like Eli Forester. But here's where the trail takes an even darker turn. In Eli's notebook, detectives found jury rosters. Not just for the Stanwyck case, but clippings, photocopies, even jury pool listings for other trials across the state. He had a disturbing fixation on the courtroom. One entry read, "To sit in judgment is to become invisible. Everyone looks at the accused. No one watches the watcher." In another, "I wonder if anyone else has gotten away with it, like I did. Maybe we're all in the same room." Investigators began to suspect that Eli may have sought out jury duty, not just for the Stanwyck trial, but potentially for others. But there was no central record of jury service back then. Many counties still kept that data in paper archives. So they went hunting. In 2001, a man named Carl Jeffers was charged with the murder of his girlfriend, Daphne Wallace. She had vanished 2 months earlier. Jeffers claimed he was innocent. The prosecution had no body, no murder weapon, and no eyewitnesses. Just a handful of texts and vague motive theory. But a local jury convicted him. When they pulled the juror list, one name popped out: Forester E. Juror number 11. He'd served quietly, diligently, and he had voted guilty. When detectives cross-referenced Eli's credit card purchases from 1999 to 2003, a pattern emerged. Hardware store receipts, rope, duct tape, hunting knives, motel stays near major highways in Oregon and Washington. Odd purchases like industrial-strength trash bags, bleach, gloves, and one particularly chilling entry, a receipt for a plastic drop cloth, purchased just 2 days before Colleen Stanwyck was killed. It wasn't random. It was ritual. A retired postal worker named Henry Blake called in after watching a segment on the Stanwyck case. He said, "That man on the news, he's the same guy who chatted with me at a rest stop back in '99. Said he was hunting deer, but he had no gear, no gun. Just a small red cooler and a weird smile. That rest stop? Less than 3 miles from where Tara Lynn was later found." Blake gave them the license plate number he had written down back then. He'd reported it at the time, but no one followed up. It matched Eli Forester's 1997 Chevy Lumina. The last page in Eli's notebook was unlike the others. No names, no addresses, just one sentence, written in shaky, jagged handwriting. "They still haven't noticed the other one. The one in the water." Divers were dispatched to 3 lakes near Tacoma, including a spot known locally as Black Hollow Pond, rumored to be bottomless in parts. On April 3, 2021, they recovered something. A steel drum, sealed with bolts. Inside were decomposed remains, cloth scraps, and a lock of red hair. Dental records confirmed it. Kimberly Neely. The psychological profile developed by the FBI now categorizes Eli Forester as a jury pathological offender. A man who not only committed murder but manipulated the justice system as part of his compulsion. He didn't just want to get away with it. He wanted to watch others fail to catch him. He wanted to see innocents convicted, and to hear the words guilty echo for crimes he committed. And somehow no one saw it coming. Not the court, not the system, not even the people sitting right beside him. Carl Jeffers is now petitioning for a retrial. For more cold cases have been reopened. 2 families have had their daughters returned at last, though far too late. And Raymond Clark? He rarely speaks to the press anymore. But when asked what haunts him most, he said, "I looked that man in the eyes. We shared a lunch table. I thought he was quiet. Turns out, I was sitting next to a ghost." August 2022, Washington State Crime Lab, Olympia. The decomposed remains found in the drum at Black Hollow Pond didn't just solve Kimberly Neely's case. Inside the lining of the drum, crime scene techs found a hair long black with an intact root. It didn't match Kimberly. It didn't match Eli Forester. A DNA search returned a hit. Michelle Ong, age 29, disappeared in 1998. A missing person case out of Spokane, never classified as a homicide. Now it was murder, and the barrel had become a time capsule, a graveyard of names no one had connected. When the investigation into Forester's life expanded, the FBI requested a full digital forensic sweep of his home office, including cloud backups. Among the files, encrypted folders named after jury case numbers, and one folder labeled simply, "Watch Me." Inside was a single .mp4 video, timestamped October 10, 2003, the night before Colleen Stanwyck's verdict. In the dim glow of a desk lamp, Eli appears on screen, speaking to the camera, expression unreadable. "Tomorrow we close the loop. I made them believe. He'll go down and they'll all clap for it. But she knows. I think Colleen knew it was me. That's why she screamed my name." He pauses, smiles slightly. "After this, I'll stop, I think. Maybe. Or maybe I'll serve again." The video cuts off. Authorities believe this was his personal confession, a kind of sick trophy proof that he'd not only killed, but manipulated the justice system to finish the job. Psychiatrists brought in to study the case coined a term for what Forester embodied: judicial predation. A rare pathology where control over the justice process becomes part of the offender's gratification. He didn't just hide in plain sight. He wore the robe of justice, even while soaked in blood. Legal analysts now argue that Forester's case may be the first documented instance of a serial killer infiltrating jury duty multiple times as a cover for their own crimes. How many other times had he raised his hand for jury selection? How many cases did he influence directly or subtly? We may never know. In early 2023, investigators discovered a storage unit Forester had rented under a false name. Inside were a box of newspaper clippings, all about women found dead or missing in the Pacific Northwest. A jury duty summons going back to 1997. A sealed envelope labeled, "If they ever find me." Inside the envelope was a single photograph. Colleen Stanwyck, jogging, taken from behind a tree, undated. On the back, scrawled in pen, "Too perfect to leave alone. Too smart to live." After Eli Forester's crimes were fully uncovered, the Washington state judiciary underwent a full audit of jury procedures. Among the disturbing findings, no cross-jurisdictional screening between counties for repeated jury service, and no psychological screening unless a juror self-reports mental health issues, no background checks beyond basic ID, which means Eli didn't beat the system let him in, multiple times. Raymond Clark was exonerated, his record expunged. The state offered him a $750,000 settlement but no apology. He declined the money. "I don't want their cash. I want their courtroom torn down, burned to the foundation, because it let a killer sit beside me while I begged for my life." He now lectures at universities on wrongful convictions, but he never returned to Tacoma. In late 2023, the FBI quietly launched Operation Silhouette, a confidential task force to re-examine every cold case in Washington and Oregon from 1995 to 2005. They believe Eli Forester's trail may go even deeper, because in his final notebook, his most cryptic one, there were 12 numbered initials, none matching known victims. 12 more may be out there, lost, forgotten, buried under silence. Justice is supposed to be blind. But what happens when the one hiding inside the system sees everything? Eli Forester is gone. But what he did, what he proved, is now a stain on the American justice system. Because justice failed not just the victims, it failed itself.